What's up, Joe? What's up, everybody? I'm Jeff Fannell, and this is Sports360. Today I will be joined by Reggie Pegues, a childhood friend from Hollis, Queens. It's Christmas time in Hollis, Queens. Mom's cooking chicken and collard greens. You don't know that song. But what you should know is that my man Reggie is a former professional basketball player and youth coach who more recently has launched several businesses. And these days he spends considerable time empowering others by encouraging them to do the same. I recently caught up with Reggie to talk about his journey and his life's work. I'm telling you, it's a powerful story. So I invite you to stay right here as I catch up with my man Reggie Pegues, two brothers from Hollis, Queens, kicking it on Sports 360. Well, I am pleased today to have with me on the podcast an old friend of mine, a good friend of mine, Reggie Pegues. Reggie and I grew up in Hollis, Queens together. Reggie played basketball overseas for a number of years. He did a great deal of coaching, both in AAU and in high school. And he's also a businessman and an entrepreneur, and he's doing some great things in the community. And so Reggie is joining us today to talk about all of that and more, and I'm excited about it. Reggie, how you doing today?
Hey, Jeff, man, I'm wonderful. I'm blessed, man. First, I want to thank you for having me on your show today. It's really an honor, and it's amazing but not surprising how far we've actually come, from all the years that we've known each other from growing up in Hollis.
Yeah, man. And you and I were talking about this a little bit about knowing each other for almost 50 years. And that's just amazing when you think about it, right? 50 years.
Yeah, I know, right? When I thought about that before you'd asked me on, I was thinking about it. I said, how long has Jeff and I actually known each other? And that's when I asked you the question. I said, did we meet in elementary school or was it junior high? Couldn't remember. And then you said it was elementary school. Then I realized, I said, wow, that was over 50-something years ago. That's amazing.
It really is. It really is. And here's the thing, too, that's amazing. It's been through social media that we've been able to reconnect, right? And so, that's a blessing right there. But I'm glad to have you on today, Reg, to talk about what, for me, from my perspective, is an extraordinary basketball and life journey that you've had. And I just want to really get into it and have you share your story because I think it's a powerful story, man, that talks about the intersection of life and sports. And for you, that sport was basketball. So looking forward to talking to you about it. And why don't we start here? Reggie, for me, growing up in Hollis with you, you were what I consider a basketball prodigy, right? You had talent from a young age. You were always playing up, meaning you were playing with older players. And I'd like you to share with us to start, the relevant points of how you got started, right? When did you first realize you had some talent? Who also recognized that talent that you had? And how you started developing as a basketball player early on?
Well, it started in my parents' backyard, actually. I remember as a kid, my father saw that I wanted to play basketball, and I would just dribble in the yard, but I had no basket. And this was before they had, the pre-fab baskets that you can go to, Toys R Us or whatever and buy. So my father was very ingenious. So he took an old gate, and he kind of figured, he looked at a picture, and he kind of made me a backboard and then found a rim someplace, and he put it all together. And you remember playing in my backyard. You might not have been playing it back in the early days, but that's where I started, in my backyard. And little by little, I was really introduced to the game by Steve Shell, who was my sister's boyfriend. And he worked with me, taught me the fundamentals. And little by little, I progressed. And that famous park that you talk about, 192, I went and was able, which was right across the street from my house. So I lived in the park. as you know. You lived a few blocks away, but I lived in the park, and I went over there. And you brought up a point the other day that was absolutely amazing, and you and I were both laughing about it, and I never really thought about it, but there were two sets of baskets. There were two sets of baskets, but there was just one main court. So I always wanted to play on the main court, but you and I, we started on the side courts that faced a particular street, 204th Street. But the goal was always to play on that court that was facing Hollis Avenue.
Right.
And again, through Steve, Shell, and some other people, the other major guys that were right there in the community, Ike Parker and, Pearl Washington and, just guys like that were just in the neighborhood. The goal was to get over there. So, my thing was I used to, play on the side courts and stuff, but I really would just hang around on that court, that main court on Hollis Avenue. And I never forget one day it just came down to a point where they asked me, hey, they were short of man, they needed somebody. And they introduced me into the game. And from that point on, I just started playing with the guys, the older guys, on the main court facing Hollis Avenue.
Yeah, and as you said, when we talked about it, see, for me, it was clear. And for the rest of us who didn't have the talent that you had, but were of the same age, we played on those courts that were facing 2/4, right? That's what we called it, right? It was 204th Street, but we called it 2/4, right? So we played on the courts facing 2/4, right? But the guys who really could played on the courts that faced Hollis Avenue. And even there was one main court, right? The one near the Park House, where that's really where the games were going on. And I would tell you, Rez, there were times when we're playing on those other side courts, and somebody would make a move, somebody would do something great, and the roar would go up from over there, and we would stop and look over there, and there you are balling with them, man. And we're like, look at the Reggie, man. It caught our attention. It caught our attention, man.
That's amazing because actually, again, like I said, you and I grew up together, and when you referenced that the other day, I never looked at it that way. I really didn't. I just loved the game so much, and I wanted to play against the best. And at that time, I was like the smallest one. I must have been about maybe 11, 12 years old, and I'm playing with guys that were 18, 19, grown men.
Right.
Getting knocked around and taking my lumps, but I hung in there, and I tell you, that's really where I forged my game. That's where I patterned my game. I learned a lot of great things, and just from being in that environment, in that hotly contested, type of atmosphere, I generated a few of my own oohs and ahs during the day. So it was really good. It was great to be that. And one of the things that you pointed out was there were times where you could see where crowds would actually gather around that court and watch the game. And the one thing that it taught me was I was never really in awe, of it. I wasn't afraid of the moment. You know what I mean? And a lot of times that came from some of the older guys who really knew me and saw my potential before I could even see it. It would literally get on me, be like, Reggie, listen, you need to play. You got to get out here. I'm out here trying to, guard a grown man, and I might have did a move or crossed somebody over and finished on them, and now this big old guy wants to, rough me up. But I learned a lot. I learned a lot of life value, playing on that court.
Right. I'm sure you did. Now, what about when you started playing organized ball, on teams as opposed to playing in the park, playing pickup games? When did that start? And, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, that started when I was about I was 11 or 12 years old. And that's when Ike Parker, who was at that time, he was probably in our radius of where we live. Ike Parker was probably the most renowned player around, but he lived right up the street, and I was best friends with his brother Donald. So he always knew me, saw me in the park and stuff like that. So out of nowhere, I'll never forget, out of nowhere, it was like a fall day, like September or something like that. And Ike just came to my house. He came to and asked my mother, asked her, could I go to a tryout? and it was at St. Pascal's, which was like 112th Avenue, 194th Street. That's, CYO thing. I didn't know anything about it, anything. It was just more basketball, and he was like, listen, you need to come down here and try out for this team or whatever. And he took me down there, and again, I didn't know none of these guys because at that time, St. Pascal's was a Catholic school, so a lot of the kids that were there were from the school and from that inlying community, the area, the O'Connell Park over that way.
Sure.
And, went in, didn't know nobody, and they put me on the court, and I was going against this guy, John Johnson, who was considered at his age a prodigy for his age. And, long story short, I just started giving him the business, real quick there. Everybody was like, who is this kid? I was just sitting up in the stands. I remember him sitting up in the stands, and he's up there smiling. Everybody in the gym is looking at like, who is this kid? Where he come from? And I'll never forget, I was making a move toward the basket that was near the doors that entered into the gym, and the program at that time was run by Father Ernie Whitlock. And he had come into the doors just as I made a crossover move and took John Johnson to the basket. And I'll never forget, and I can see the expression on his face right now. He just did a double take. He ran over to the coach and said, listen, sign this kid up right now. So that's why I first started playing organized ball was in CYO, which is the Catholic Youth Organization. And from that, at that particular time, the Gavan family, Jose Gavan Sr. and, Cecil Holler and all these other people from the community, that's when they started launching another league called the Hollis Biddies. So I was right behind Ike. Ike was one of the first original people that played in Hollis Biddies. I came right behind him. He was like a superstar there. I came right behind him. And so now I had some place to play. You know what I mean? I started off at CYO, and then I went over to Hollis Biddies. And at that time, when we first started, we were playing at Andrew Jackson's on Saturdays morning. So that was a awesome experience. So those are like the first two organized teams that I played with.
Yeah, and Reggie, I just want to say too, we both grew up in Hollis. I was on Francis Lewis, right off Hollis Avenue. You were on 25th, right off Hollis Avenue. So we're a couple of blocks away from each other. And during the time when we were growing up, it was a close-knit community, right? I mean, people knew each other, right? We went to the same schools, we shopped at the same stores, we walked the same streets. People knew each other. And so some of the things that you're describing quickly got around. You know what I mean? The information got around. And I just want to set that stage because it's just important, because a lot of times in communities now, they seem to be fractured a little bit, but our community was tight. And so if someone was doing something noteworthy, whether it's in sports or business or whatever, folk knew about it. And so as you started doing these things, it started to be known and to be spread. And so I just want our listeners to understand that's what it was like back in Hollis when, we're talking what? The 70s, maybe, right? The early 70s. And that's what it was like. So, okay. So you started there at CYO at St. Pascal's and Hollis Biddies. You mentioned to me the other day that as part of your experience with the Hollis Biddies, you went to Brazil at the age of 12.
Yes.
Talk about that a little bit.
And again, that was one of those things, okay, because, it happened for me in junior high school. I was the youngest in junior high school, and I was able to make the quote-unquote varsity team in junior high school. I wasn't supposed to be there because I was too young. And they had a traveling team. Because Mr. Gavan and Mr. Holler and Mr. Westbrook, they all worked for IBM at that time. And it was so awesome because we went to Shea Stadium and actually got to stand on the field. And we did some amazing things through their relationships. So a tournament, they were having a 15 and under or something like that tournament in Brazil. Right? Now, mind you, I had never really been out of the 5 boroughs. A day trip for me might have been going to Long Island to visit my sister,
right.
But I didn't, talking about traveling extensively. I'd never been on a plane before, none of that. So again, they were having tryouts for this team, and they were going with older guys. And because of my relationships, and because Mr. Gavin had known me from the Hollis Biddies, I was thrown in there with some of the top players from around the city, and I was able to forge my way to make the squad. In my mind, I always thought that it was a kind of like a pity thing that they took me because they knew me. But
right.
Later on, having conversations with folks, they were like, no, I really earned the right to be on that team. So yeah, we went to Brazil for a week, and it was the most phenomenal thing I ever saw. We actually played in an outdoor arena, which I had never seen before. I had never seen so many people, in one place, just cheering or booing, and that whole experience. It just opened up my eyes, and glory be to God. That opened up the opportunity for me to understand that there was more than Hollis, that I could travel, I could use my gifts and talents, and I can use them in such a way where I could see the world. So that was my first foray of being outside the country and playing. And those games were like intense, because we were playing against European teams and, different things. And we weren't kind of used to the way that they officiated the games. And because we were Americans, there was a little, animosity there for that.
Right.
But
right.
We made it to the quarterfinals. But it was really hard. It was hard, but it was an experience that I'll never forget.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, that when you told me that the other day, first of all, I didn't know about it. And then second, as I thought about it, as a 12-year-old from Hollis to be, playing basketball overseas, that had to be something that left a real impression on you. So when you come back, and you come back, you also played, in addition to playing for the Hollis Biddies and playing for St. Pascal's, what about in school? The school teams. Tell us a little bit about your experience playing for, whether it's the elementary, junior high, and we'll get to high school in a minute, but, set the stage for us there as far as playing for school teams.
Yeah, that was really, really interesting because, as you're aware, we were in that transition period educationally. Initially, when we entered into elementary school, the 6th grade class was part of elementary school. Junior high school was 7th, 8th, and 9th. It was some kind of hybrid, or 7th, 8th, or something like that. But you and I were in the first class of 6th graders that went into junior high school. And again, you and I attended the same school, and that was awesome. So, there, you had gym class, different things like that. And unbeknownst to me, originally, I thought about this after you and I had a conversation. One of my gym teachers was the coach of the junior high school team. So he knew me, he didn't know me. And like you said, I wasn't paying attention to it, but there was a little bit of a buzz about me being at the school and playing. So what happened, tryouts came, and it was clearly written, for the tryouts that 6th graders couldn't try out, right? 6th graders could not try out. And I was like, no. I was like, no. I was like, no, because you got a little glimpse of different people in the school, and I knew Ike Parker was there. I knew that Archie Joyner was there, who was another big-name player from the community. There were some big-name players there. I said, nah, I can hang with these guys. Even though they were older than me, I felt that I could hang. So I snuck into the tryouts, right? And right. I remember sneaking in, and you always have, we didn't call them haters back then, but, you always have your haters, and there were some guys that wanted to blow up my spot and tell on me. And Ike Parker actually was, the more I think of it, he was really a guardian angel in my earlier years. He, he quieted the noise, and I went through the tryouts. And lo and behold, I get to the final tryouts, I'm again, playing against older guys, bigger guys, stronger guys. But I make it to the final tryouts, and one of the gym teachers who actually was a science teacher as well, I don't know if you remember Mr. Brenner, he came in, and I didn't know that he and Coach Zajac had a relationship, and he came in, and he sees me sitting there because, before I could hide in the crowd, because when there was like 20, 40 kids in the gym, he would come in there, but I could hide. I was kind of dumb because I didn't want him to see me, But now we're down to the final cut, so there's only like maybe 12, 15 guys in the gym, right? So you can't hide now. He comes in the gym, and he goes to Coach Zajac and says, "What's he doing here?" He says, "Oh, who?" He says, "Pegues. What's he doing sitting here?" And he goes, "Well, he tried out for the team." He says, he's in the 6th grade, right? So now the coach had a dilemma. He wanted to let me go, but the other guys, said, "Hey, look, he earned the right to be here." The coach thought that I earned the right to be there. So my first school team was at junior high school 192, and I made the varsity team, quote unquote. There was only one team, but I made the team at the 6th grade. So that's where it started.
Okay. So you're playing and you're having a lot of success, right? CYO, community teams, the school team, as you just described. But at the same time, right, at around this time, there was some challenges that hit your life, some tragedies and some other challenges that hit your life and had a dramatic effect on you. Share with us what you will about some of those things.
Yeah. So coming out of junior high school, 8th grade, at that particular time, again, like you said, my name started circulating. I started being approached by various different people to play with their various different teams and on the outside. And life was great. I loved, I was doing the thing that I loved. I was playing the game that I loved. And, like you said, I was reaching a level of success and notoriety. And then that summer, between 7th and 8th grade, my older brother, Police Officer Thomas Pegues, was murdered on duty. And that gave me a real different perspective about life. And it shook me to my core because he was my idol. He was my rock, He was, everything to me. We were very, very close. And his life was tragically and suddenly taken. And then at that particular juncture, like I said, everything for me changed. My perspective changed. It was devastating to my family, particularly to my mother. And it just wasn't as important, as it once was. It didn't hold the luster in my life that it once had. It didn't hold the prominence that it once had because, again, I, had lost someone who was very close to me. I saw the effects of it on my mother. I saw the effects of it on my family. And it was hard to figure out because I was basically left spiraling down with no, imagine a ship without a rudder. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
The motor's
Sure.
going without a rudder. It's just going any direction, and in all probability, it's going to, hit dry land or it's going to sink. So it was a rough time, and we were living in a community where there was prevalent gang violence, there was prevalent drug addiction. There was a lot of different choices, So I thank God that I was able to navigate that pretty much unscathed. But, I do have a few scars, that I did collect because of the experience. So that was a turning point, an actual turning point in my life when it came to sports.
Right. And you talked about it a little bit here about the game didn't have that same appeal and everything else. And understandably so, right? I mean, this is a tragedy, your brother, for your brother who is also a role model, you're close to him and everything else. But you did continue to play, right? And how difficult was that? Because, again, you're well known, in the community, among the coaches who are coaching, whether in school or, community teams and that sort of thing, AAU teams. And I'm sure people are still expecting you to play. So how did you deal with that? The expectations that you should still be playing, but yet you're dealing with its tragedy at the same time.
Yeah, that was odd. It's not humorous, but I laugh ironically, because now that you remind me, that it was a very odd space, because it was, I was blessed with such ability that I have to tell you, Jeff, a lot of times mentally, I might have been going through the motions, but I was vacant. You know what I'm saying? I'm like in the midst of the game, and I'm not thinking about the game. I'm thinking about the last time I spent time with my brother, or, I'll never forget, the night when the officers and my sister-in-law came to the house, and that scream that my mother, that wail that she let out when they told her that her son had been killed. So I was having thoughts like that. I might have been playing the games and stuff, and and to be quite honest, I don't even know. Someone else outside of me would have to tell me, but I don't even know whether or not my ability had dropped down, or, my game, took a step backwards, or whatever it was. But a lot of times when I was playing those games, I was vacant, and at that particular time, again, my focus shifted because I didn't have the guidance of my brother, and street agents started to approach me. And if the audience isn't familiar, or if they're not familiar with street agents, they're guys that are always hanging around, because they want to be connected to the next player and this stuff. And there's certain inducements and certain enticements that they gave. I can't tell you how many pairs of free sneakers I got and how much gear I got, and how it actually got to a point where my ability had taken me to a place where I would actually charge, like, somebody would want me to play for one of their pickup teams. I would actually charge them to play for them.
Really?
For the day. Yeah. I would charge them and say, listen, well, you want me to play today, you got to give me $200 and 2 pairs of sneakers. And they would do it. They would do it. So it was like that, so my focus had started to really drift, and now I'm being recruited by high schools, and my perspective is, to answer your question, people were asking me, do this, do this, do that. But internally, the thing that I found very ironic, no one ever asked me how I was doing.
Wow.
Nobody asked me how I was doing. Nobody said, hey, man, listen, are you all right? It wasn't that. It's like, listen, we got a game today. Go get some buckets. Let's win this game. Let's win this championship. Let's get this little trophy. And I'm like, you know what? This is what's really important right now. This is not what's going on. I need help. I need to converse. I need to have a conversation. And unfortunately, in the Black community, when we are faced with tragedies or faced with issues, one of the things that we are not really, good at is having conversations. We just deal with the situation and we move on. And I needed to talk to somebody at that period, during that period of time, and I wasn't availed that opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, that really had to be tough, because again, you were always around older people, as we talked about, from playing up from a young age, and then you have all these expectations among older people, right, who are pulling at you, wanting you to continue to play the game. So you did end up going to high school and playing for the high school team, Andrew Jackson, which was one of the better schools in Queens. Tell us a little bit about that experience at Andrew Jackson, and also what's going on, at home and with you personally.
Well, during that particular time, again, I was recruited, and like you said, Andrew Jackson was a powerhouse, perennial. It was still close, because you and I, we went to all the close proximity schools. We went to 134, we went to 192, and going to Jackson was actually a little stretch for us because that was more than 3 blocks. So, going in, it was a great experience. The awesome thing was that your older brother had gone there. My older sister had gone there. They both graduated from there, so there was a history there. And I walk into the school, and again, you know, it's a big environment, and as you said, my name preceded itself. So, you know, there were people that wanted to test me and wanted to challenge me, you know, on the court and even off the court. But, you know, I felt like I started to come out of it, you know, but then the next thing hit, because during that phase, my mother contracted cancer. So I'm like, here we go again. I thought I was catching my breath from one situation. Now there's something else to deal with. And unfortunately, back then, they didn't have the type of treatments that are available now back then, you know. So dealing with that situation, and I go through freshman year, and my mother's not doing well, and, you know, just, you know, still trying to recover from the loss of my brother. And you're getting, like you said, the demands, the expectations. I'm supposed to be this and that, and people projected me to be an all-city player and all this other stuff. And I really mentally, Jeff, I had checked out. I really did. I was going through the motions, but mentally, I just checked out. I was like, hey, man, look, you know, there's other stuff going on out here, you know, that's vastly more important than basketball. You know, I just lost my brother. Now I'm faced again with another loss because, you know, generally we grew up with someone that you knew, family member, you, whatever, contracted cancer. The inevitability was that they were going to die. So now, you know, the stakes are even higher. First I lose my brother, now I'm about to lose my mom. You know? Sure. So I'm like, So, you know, we fought through the freshman year, and I had a decent year. And then the next year, you know, I made it to the varsity because I was on JV, and I made it to the varsity for the next year, and that was a great experience. I was surrounded by some good guys, but I still wasn't there. My mother was digressing in her health, and I have a baby, my sophomore year, 16 years old. So now things are compounding themselves. And went through that, you know, sophomore year. Didn't play much, you know, on the varsity. But my mother's digressing. Now I'm about to have a newborn child, and it just things started escalating. So basketball just really wasn't a priority at all. You know, at that particular juncture. You know, I would play in the street games and, you know, pick up a few dollars here and there. But in terms of priority on education and priority on playing sports at that particular time, it just wasn't there.
Yeah.
At that juncture.
Yeah. I mean, and with all those challenges and the emotions you had to be going through, it's understandable that's, you know, and you're young, right? You're 16.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways.
And navigating by myself.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. So, all right. So here you are. You're in 10th grade now. You're on the varsity team and everything else, but you have all these things going on, right? You know, you have a baby on the way. Your mom is you know, getting worse. Her health is getting worse. And what happens here? I mean, just tell us how things progressed. I mean, things get better. What happened?
Actually, things didn't get better. You know, eventually, before that season was over, I failed off the team because I just couldn't focus in school and stuff wasn't getting done. I failed off the team, so I didn't get to finish that season. My mother is bedridden. My girlfriend at the time, who later became my wife, she's about to give birth because my son was born in May. So it's that going into that summer, right? And so my son is born that May. My mother is getting progressively worse. She's pretty much at the end because that's why the first day of summer, June 21st, has a tremendous significance for me because that's the day that my mother passed away. So my son is born May 26th, and just about a month later, my mother dies. Now, in between that, after I failed off the team, I dropped out of school, my mother was bedridden, and she was home most of the days because my father still had to go out to earn a living. My older siblings had moved out of the house and everything else, and it was just me and my younger sister. So I had to take on a new role. I had to make sure that my sister went to school and was doing what she was supposed to do. I'm trying to be available to the mother of my son, and I wanted to be there for my mom, you know?
Sure.
So I'm juggling a whole lot of different balls all at the same time, you know what I mean? All the while, you know, I'm tearing apart inside because I'm first and foremost, you know, I'm not doing what I was gifted to do. I wasn't playing basketball really anymore. And I got all these other situations going on, and everybody's like treating me like I'm invisible because, see, when you're up, everybody's with you. But when you got a problem, you can't find nobody. So it was a very trying time. It was a very trying time.
And so just take us through. I mean, how did, you know, you're at this point, you drop out of school and you said, you know, on June 21st, you know, your mom passed away. So you're dealing with all these things, right? Your brother, your mom, you have a new baby and all that. You drop out of school, but eventually you did go back. You have said to me on more than one occasion, you made a promise to your mom that you would go back and finish school. And so you eventually kept that promise. So, you know, pick up from there and let us know, you know, what happened. You know, how'd you end up doing that, and where did you go from there?
Actually, I went back to Jackson, and they had you know, fortunately, when I was doing school, I was like in the top percentile of my class. So when they looked at my records, you know, they didn't want to generally make me a statistic and cast me to the side because they saw academic potential. So they put me in a program called the Academy, which was a advanced educational unit inside of Jackson. It wasn't like we didn't take regular classes like everybody else, but we took specialized classes with specialized instructors. So I was able to get in there, and through the Academy, I was able to get my diploma. And at that time, I also was maintaining a job. My father made sure that I had a job. So we worked together at Mercy Hospital in Long Island. So I would go to school, and they worked with me. I would go to school part of the day, and then I would be able to leave. And then I went to my job, and I worked there part-time. And, you know, that's basically how I graduated high school. But fortunately, I was able to, you know, take some college courses to get caught up and everything. And, you know, one thing led to another. I had a lot of support in there. And, you know, that's how I got past and got through that phase. You know, at that time, you know, I realized the responsibility. My son was born then. You know, and I said, look, I can't go out like this. I wasn't raised that way. I wasn't exposed to that. I made a promise to my mom. So I did take the steps to finish up, and that's how I was able to graduate.
Yeah, and one other thing, Reg, we were talking earlier about, you know, the close-knit community in Hollis, Queens, and things like that. And at the time when we were growing up, many of the households were two-parent households, right? I mean, not all, but many of them were. And we grew up at a time when, you know, the neighborhood would parent you. You know what I mean? In other words, if a neighbor saw you doing something, they would tell you, and that, you know, hey, I'm going to tell your mom, or they'll just tell you to stop doing what you were doing. And when you said you made the promise to your mom of finishing school and you end up doing it, there was an expectation, not only from our parents, but from other parents on the block. You're going to school. You know what I mean? You are going to go to school. And so to hear you talk about that and how you were able to do it is really a function of how we grew up. And I'm glad for that and glad that you were able to do it. So let's transition from there. So because after you got through school, you did spend some time in the military, and it was in the military that you got reacquainted with your first love, which is basketball, right? So bring us into that phase of your life.
Well, I get out of school. I work for a little while. I'm raising my son. At that particular time, the community was really starting to break apart because it was rampant with drugs. There was just so much, you know, gang violence. There were just so many other things that could have led me down the wrong path. But I knew instinctively and internally that that was not who I was made out to be. That wasn't the life that I wanted to live. It wasn't the example I wanted to set for my son. So I'll never forget, I went to the recruiting office on Jamaica Avenue, right? And I took the test, you know, they give you a little exam that you got to take or whatever. And I took the test, and then all of a sudden, I don't know how they did it, whatever, but all of a sudden, all these recruiters are running at me, saying, "Oh, you know, join the Army, join the Navy, join the Air Force," and it was because of the score that I got. It was so reflective. So one of my brothers had been in the Air Force. My other brother had been in two brothers had been in the Marines. None of us had been in the Army, and I sure wasn't going to go be stuck on nobody's boat for 6 or 7 months at a time. So the Navy wasn't an option.
Right.
So I joined. So I went and joined the Army, and here's the reason why. Let me tell you quite honestly why I joined the Army. I joined the Army because at that particular juncture, I wanted to do something physical. I needed a release, Jeff. I really needed a release, a physical release, an emotional release. So I said, okay, if I go in here and I just do 1,000 push-ups a day and run and do all this great stuff that I've seen on the commercials, you know.
Right.
You know, I said, okay, cool,
Right.
that'll work. You know, so went and enlisted, and as God would have it, I went to basic training, not too far from where you live. I did basic training in Fort Dix, just before they kind of closed it up, and went there, went to school there, and as we're getting ready to leave, you know, they give you your orders. They let you know where you're going to be stationed, right? So I was in a class of about 60 people, and people are getting their orders. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes if they don't cut your orders, they'll hold you back, which means you're like in limbo. You're not really in the Army. You're not really out of the Army, but you just got to hang around. I didn't want that to happen. So lo and behold, long story short, I get the opportunity to go to Europe. Everybody else has got their orders. I'm worried because there's like 6 or 7 of us who haven't gotten our orders yet. And I'm like, Lord, I don't want to be a holdover. And I'll never forget that day. We're standing in ranks, and prior to this, I actually had a vision of going on a long plane ride. And the sergeant announced my name and told me that I was going to Germany. Now, think about this, Jeff. You and I were born in Hollis, right? The closest that we ever got to Germany was watching Wild World of Sports at that time.
Or Hogan's Heroes.
Exactly, right? So here I am, you know, I get my order, I get to go to Germany, and I'll never forget it. One day, cause it was like an 18-hour flight. Again, never been on a flight that long. And one day I'm standing on the corner of 205th Street in Hollis, and then the very next day I'm standing in a country where I can't read the signs, I don't understand the language.
Right.
Nothing. Right? So they just totally uprooted me. I go to Europe, and long story short, again, I was there in total almost 3 years, 2.5 years. But my first year, I go to the rec hall, and I said, you know what, I'm here. I'm away from everything. I'm away from everybody. I was able to think and clear my head. And I started going back to the gym. You know, I just started because we had a rec hall, a nice facility, you know, coming from where we came from. It was a nice facility, you know, and everything. I was like, hey, man, listen, they got baskets, they got lights, I'm good. You know, so started playing, started shooting around, started getting myself back in shape, started feeling better, started clearing my mind. And then one day I'm playing, and I'm playing with this lieutenant. And we're just out there balling. I thought we were just balling playing. Little to my, you know, I didn't know that my company commander owned a professional team. He actually owned 2, but he owned the team in the town that I was in, which is Permisons. And he sent the guy over, we started conversating, and then he asked me to come down to a tryout. And I went to the tryouts, and I made the team. Now, the thing about it was it wasn't the military team. It was a professional team for that particular town. And the rules were you could only have 2 Americans on the team. So there was like 6 of us that tried out. I beat the other guys out. There was a veteran that was there. So I made the team. And that was awesome because it created additional income for me and my family, my new family. And it got me out of doing military details. So it was awesome.
So you're getting paid to play basketball now, right? You're getting paid to play. You're playing in Europe. You're playing in Germany. Did you see other parts of the world as you were playing? Did you travel around and play in other countries?
Well, yeah, we traveled all around Germany. We went to Italy, we went to Spain, we went to Amsterdam. And believe it or not, see, I was there before the wall came down. We actually did a couple of exhibitions in East Germany, which that was a trip in and of itself, because if people don't know, the KGB is real. That secret military thing, we went to practice and came back and found out they had went through all our stuff to look for whether or not we were, spies. It was really crazy, to do all that. But yeah, we went to England, we went to France. I think I mentioned Italy. So yeah, we did get to travel around a little bit.
Okay, and you mentioned that you were in the Army, 2.5 or 3 years or something like that. So is that how long you played, or did you play after the Army?
I came back. I played 2.5 years in the military, and then I came back and I played in some semi-pro leagues here in the States. They had the Rucker Pro League, different things like that. So I played in those things just because I just wanted to keep playing. And it kept me out of trouble, Jeff, because going at that particular time when I came back to the United States, that's when the crack epidemic broke. And I had been out of the country. I had no idea what that even was,
Yeah.
Now, the thing about notoriety is this, when we grew up, the dope boys knew who you were, because a lot of times when I was playing in games and stuff like that, they were on the side betting on the games and doing all kinds of stuff. And they also, this may sound kind of counterintuitive, but later on, I realized a lot of those guys that were in the drug game who knew who I was and knew my story, they actually created ways for me to have a hall pass, to be able to travel through gangs, to go into different neighborhoods. And basically, there was a couple of people who were well known who put the word out that, listen, he's not to be touched under no circumstances. So with the notoriety, when you come back, now they're approaching you differently, like, hey, you can play on my team. They sponsor teams or whatever, but then it was like, hey, listen, won't you run this package for me? Or won't you do this and do that?
Sure.
And I was like, nah. I was like, nope, that's not what it was about. Again, my son is a little bit older now. I'm really thinking about I did get married while I was in the military to my girlfriend, and it's just instinctually wasn't the path that I wanted to go on. So I had to do something different, and that's when I began to. That's when I decided to become an entrepreneur.
And that's the thing. Again, as I said earlier, when I reconnected with you on social media, I saw a lot of the things you were doing in that regard. I know you had a real estate business at one point, and then you started, doing some other things that you'll tell us about. But the thing that struck me too, Reg, was not only were you building businesses to take care of yourself and your family, but you were and you are helping other people do the same thing. And that's the thing that for me really resonates. And so tell us a little bit about both of those things, the businesses you built for you and your family, but also the work that you're doing to help others do the same thing.
Well, yeah, it was awesome. Actually, I was working for a realtor, and I ended up being one of the top realtors in his office. Now, mind you, I had no experience. I had no idea. I just, for me, I always loved to play Monopoly. So I figured real estate was the next best thing, but the only real difference was the money and the houses were real. So right. It was a real cool thing. It was a real cool thing to do. But, you know me, Jeff. I've always had a heart for helping people. That's one of the things that I'm so grateful for. I am just so grateful for. And so being able to do that, coming out and being a high school coach and being able to coach my son through school and to build businesses was an amazing thing, because it was always that spirit of first gratitude and then spirit of helping other people. So with the real estate, I was able to do a lot of different things. At that particular time, that's when a lot of people were losing their homes in foreclosure. we were able to put a conglomerate together where we were helping people. If the situation was too far gone, we were able to at least negotiate where they didn't walk away with nothing, that they were able to have at least some money for a fresh start. Or if we were able to come in and save the home for them, we were able to do that. So that's what we were doing initially. We would buy and flip, hold and rehab, different things like that, wholesale properties. After that, that's when the internet started really popping off. You know what I mean? It was kind of forced on me because the real estate market, remember, there was a little bit of a crash. That's when the bubble burst. And there was a mess there, so I really didn't want to deal with that. And I was looking for other things that I could do. I could spend more time at home, and got involved with various projects that involved the internet. So started building businesses online, using social media. And along the way, I was introduced to learning financial principles, introduced to using financial literacy, using biblical principles. So that just worked for me. You know what I mean? It just brought everything together, being able to understand that abundance is everywhere, prosperity is everywhere, and just because you get your share doesn't mean that it's taking away from anybody else, as many people are taught to think. And that's one of the major problems why people don't go after abundance, because they think that by them becoming blessed and becoming wealthy is taking something away from somebody else, and that's the furthest thing from the truth. So my campaign, basically through the stuff that you see me do online and working with other entrepreneurs, particularly new entrepreneurs to the industry, is to help them to get the right footing, starting off on the right things, teaching them attraction marketing instead of having to do active prospecting, and teaching them how to build their businesses to be successful through phases of tried and true and proven strategies. So that's basically what I'm doing right now.
Yeah. And as I said, I mean, I see some of the things that you're doing. I don't see all of it, but we'll get to that. You and I are going to connect offline and talk more and work more together on some things. But Reg, we're going to have to close in a couple of minutes. But your story, and I said this to you before, and I might have said it at the outset, to me is a powerful one because of the journey that you took. And this is a sports themed podcast, but it's more than that. It's really about life and your journey, as I said earlier, the intersection of life and sports with basketball. A guy coming from Hollis, Queens. We're both from Hollis, right? And we're grateful for the journeys that we've had. And I just wanted to really give you an opportunity to share what I think is a powerful testimony about so many things, the things you've gone through, the challenges you had to face, the things that you've overcome. And now you're there, positioned to help other people fulfill their dreams. And I just think it's a great thing that you're doing, and just want to keep encouraging you, man, to keep at it, man. Keep at it, because you're doing great work.
Jeff, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate your listeners. And perhaps you'll come to have me back and we could do a part 2 on this. But
yeah, I mean, because no doubt. I mean, because here's the thing, I will tell you this. We've talked about a bunch about being from Hollis, Queens. I wear that proudly, and I'm sure you do too. You know what I mean? I mean, Absolutely. That's part of who we are. And, it's something that for me and for you, I know it just resonates with us each and every day, that we came from the beginnings that we have. And we know a lot of people who didn't make it, right? We know a whole bunch of people.
Absolutely.
Who didn't make it out. And so you talked about the gratitude that you have and how that led you to generosity and sharing your time and sharing your experiences and all those things to help others, because that's what true gratitude does, right? It leads to generosity. And so, yeah, man, I want to always be mindful of those beginnings, because it helps keep me grounded. And I think it's the same for you. And that's what sort of propels you forward to do what you're doing right now. So to me, it's all good.
Definitely. Hey, Jeff, I didn't tell you this, but I have a free gift for your listeners.
What's
Anybody
that?
Listening that's interested in being an entrepreneur, I have a free PDF giveaway of How to Fire Your Boss. So if anyone is interested, you can reach me on Facebook at Reggie Pegues. That's ReggiePegues on Facebook. You can follow me on Twitter at Reggie, Reggieb, Pegues, Pegues, or you can email me at prosperingdad@outlook.com. And just say, put in a comment or put in the title, 360 Sports, and you'll get this free giveaway that I have for you guys.
Well, that sounds good. Now, let me ask you, do they have to put in 360 Sports? Because I don't know what that is. Or do they have to put in Sports 360? Because that's what...
Sports 360. I'm sorry. Sports 360. Please forgive me. Okay, you can edit that part out. Oh, I'm sorry. I want them to reference your show so that way I know it's you.
No doubt. Well, appreciate that, man. How to fire your boss. That's a good one. I just hope that my guys don't hear that because I'm about to go back to the office right about now. So
let's hope not. Well,
yeah.
they can always share my philosophy. The thing that I learned, my story is I worked a full-time job. I built a part-time business until I was able to fire my boss.
Yeah, I hear that. Well, Reg, man, again, good catching up. We're not done catching up, and we'll continue to stay in touch. But I want to thank you again for coming on today.
Jeff, I want to thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
All right. Reggie Pegues, everybody. I enjoyed that conversation with my childhood friend, Reggie Pegues. I hope you did too. Reggie's basketball odyssey has taken him to many places, some highs and some lows. But most powerful of all, basketball became a lifeline when he desperately needed it and helped him emerge victorious out of a serious downward spiral. Now, Reggie's serving as a mentor, life coach, and supporter to others who aspire to go higher and realize their dreams. If you enjoy this podcast, subscribe if you haven't done so already. And feel free to hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. I'd love to hear from you. But right now, I have to go. My man Skulli is ready to take me home. But I'll be back, and I hope to see you next time when we meet again right here on Sports 360.